All right, guys, welcome back. In this one, we're going to be talking a little bit more about advanced color palettes. And when I say advanced, I mean more advanced than the last one. Obviously, there's much more intricate ways you can do this. But this way still doesn't take too much of your time, but it's a little more mathematical and exact. Before I do show you that, though, I went through and I cleaned up our last version a little bit. Let's see, can you guys even see my screen? I hope so. Let's just make sure. So I went in, I cleaned it up a little bit so you guys could see. And one thing I like to do, I like to make the primary one, like my main primary, a little bigger so it stands out a little bit more. You don't have to, but I think for me, it's a little easier to show people and they can just see right off the bat, oh, this is the one that all of this is based off of. One thing that I also recommend that we didn't do in the last one, but we definitely will in this one, is hex codes. What do I mean by hex codes? Every color has a unique identification code. You can find it right here. Or if you go into your settings and you go to hex, you can find it there as well. I would highly recommend either on top of each color or right below each color that you paste the hex code. Your developers will thank you profusely. Probably in their minds, they probably won't say anything. But if you don't use a hex code, they will get mad. This is a way for developers to just very easily go into CSS, type in the code, and that's the color that will be projected. Without it, they have to go in and manually go through your file and find the hex code, and it's a waste of time. Let's be honest. You're the designer, you know the tool. Just put it on there really quickly. So in this one, we are going to make a little bit more advanced color palette. So I'm just going to copy this over so we've got the same frame, but I'm going to delete all of our content here. A lot of this is going to be similar, but like I said, it's a little more exact as far as getting the right shades of the colors we want. And you'll notice we will get slightly different results from this, but we're going for the same idea here. We want to go from our main color up through the lightness and then down through darkness. So I'm going to start with just primary. And I'm going to take just our main primary color there. And if it'll copy for me, which it doesn't want to, drag it over manually. What is this, the 20th century? I know, that was a terrible joke. Sorry, guys. And I'm going to shrink this down a little bit just so it's the same size as all the rest. Okay, and then I am going to do my duplicates. We'll space them out by 8 pixels because base 8 is amazing and we love it. Okay, so we've got our potential color palette here. In the last one, we went through and we manually turned up the light or turned down the light to give us that lighter, darker feel. In this one, we're going to cheat a little bit. And when I say cheat, I don't mean we're going to cut corners and save time. This actually takes a little bit longer if you're first starting out with it. This was a technique that a friend of mine, another designer, Bethany Serber, she taught me this, and I really enjoy it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in here. I've got 2 ways I can go. I can go lighter and darker, right? So lighter, I'm already set. I have this white background, so I don't have to do anything there. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just turn down my opacity. Or actually, I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to make a copy of all of these, and you'll see why in a minute. I'm just going to stick those up there. I'm not going to touch them yet. On this one, I'm going to turn down my opacity. And I've got 3 to go, so it's going to be maybe 30% a piece. I'll turn this one down by 30% or 33%, another 33%, and so on. So maybe this one I'll do 66%, or let's be a little. We'll do 70%, and then we'll go down by another 30%. So that'll put us at 40. And then we'll go down another 30, that'll put us at 10. The reason I didn't go all the way down was because then we just have a white square. That's not really helpful. So I decided to just go by increments of 30 instead of 33. So it's fairly similar. We have very similar color there. On this other side though, if I just turn down the opacity, I'm gonna have the exact same results, right? I don't wanna do that, and I can't turn up the opacity above 100 that doesn't really do anything. You can't have more than 100% of a thing, right? So what I'm gonna do, because I wanna get darker, I'm temporarily just gonna make this big hunky rectangle down here. And I am going to make it 100% black. That's hex code zeros, right? 100% black. And I'm going to put this behind these colors. And I can do that just by hitting send to back. So now it's in the very back. And I actually don't need it behind that one because that's going to stay the same. That's our main color. But behind these three, now I can do what I did before and just begin to slowly turn down the opacity. So we did 70, 40, and 10. And now if I take away, I don't want to take it away. My mind's getting ahead of me, guys. Don't do that. So now I've got these darker colors over here. But I don't want this, actually, as you saw, if I take this dark blob away, it looks exactly the same. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is transfer all these colors up here. Now, the problem with having these set at a low opacity is that whatever colors behind them is going to show through. It works in this instance, but if I put this lighter square over something blue, it's going to completely change my color, and I don't want that. The reason I did this opacity trick was just for the lightness levels. Now, here's where the fun comes in. I can go up. The reason I made this copy up here is I can take and select this square, and then I'm going to bring up my eyedropper tool. And I can do that just by selecting I on my keyboard. Now, if you see, whatever I hover over, it shows me that color, right? So what I'm saying is I've selected this square, and I'm going to hover over this color. When this is looking at the artboard, it's recognizing a color. It's not recognizing a color at X opacity over white. It's just getting the end color, right? So if I select that, they look exactly the same. The difference is this one is a 70% opacity red over white. This one is 100% opacity of what that color actually looks like. So now nothing is going to show through this red. It's a solid color, but it has that lightness we get from that lower opacity level. So I'm gonna do the same thing over here. I'll select my square, hit the eyedropper, and again, I'm not copying opacity, I'm just copying that color that the lower opacity gives it. Do the same thing here. This is where you get rid of that black square. I'm not copying the square itself, I'm copying the color that is combined when I have a combination of red and black at different opacities. And that is almost black. Now I can completely get rid of this section, and I have my row of reds. Now you'll notice there are some differences here, not extremely, but it is slightly different. And I'm going to bring this over so you guys can see. Just grab that group. Oops. I don't want to delete it, guys. I just want to copy it. So you see, there are some slight differences, but it's very, very close. I like this second option more because it's more exact, it's more mathematical. Like I said, you could go in and manually do it, but this is the way I prefer to do it. Now, you don't have to do it. You can do it however you want. I'm just giving you guys some different options. So again, I'm going to, and this is what I did last time, I just bumped this one up to 44. So it was a little more outspoken and bold. And there is that color palette. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy this one so we get the size that we want. But instead, I am going to use that blue color. And I'm going to go through that same process. And I'm not going to skip over it. I'm going to show you guys again so you don't miss out. If you don't want to watch it again, feel free to skip forward in the video. Space these all 8 apart. Okay, and then I'm going to make that copy so I have something to select from. Make that black rectangle that we can use. And then I'm going to start changing those opacities. So we did 70, 40, and 10. Now, the other reason I like using this method, when you do it with the lightness levels, your original color is not going to be right in the middle. As if you guys noticed earlier, if we look at our HSL, our lightness is at 38. Right in the middle would be 50. So that would make it really easy for me to go 50 up and 50 down as I feather out my colors. But I might have a color that is at 30 and I want to use the same trick. This way I'm not changing the lightness and I'm not having to do that math and have it completely different on both sides. I'm just using the opacity trick and it does that for me, but it keeps it even. So that's the main reason I like this method. Again, you can experiment and find your own reasoning for the methods that you use, but this is the one I like. And you'll notice I haven't put this black behind it yet. That's okay. You can do it in whatever order you want, as long as when you use that color dropper tool, you've got that black color. So I'm going to send to the back. Now I'm just going to go through the same process as before. Remember, I is that keyboard shortcut for your eyedropper. And then I can get rid of these. Now, again, we have something very similar, but it's not exactly the same, right? You can see there's some slight difference here, some slight difference here, some slight difference here. It's very, very close, but not exactly the same. Now, when we get to our grayscale, again, I'm going to use just this blue color because I don't really like that red tint to what I'm doing. Let's bump this back down to 40 just so we can copy it easier. And now the way I'm doing this is actually the long way, and I think I might change it up on you guys. You know, I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to do it just like I did over here. I'm just going to copy this entire blue section because those opacities are already set, right? And now I'm just going to come in and I'm going to play with that saturation because there's no point in going through that whole process again if we don't have to, right? So let's just change our saturation. Sorry guys, you have to be kind of patient with me. My mind gets ahead of me and I start showing you guys something and then realize it's not even the way I want to show you it. But you're all designers, so I know you've done the same thing. Empathy, right? Now you'll notice, again, very similar. This color palette gets a little bit darker on this one, but they're very, very similar to each other. Personally, I think this one looks a little bit nicer, just appealing to my eye, but that's a personal thing. So then what I would ideally do, and I'll skip ahead so you guys don't have to watch me do this, but I am just going to put hex codes to go with each one of these. So I'm going to pause real quick and then I'll bring you guys back in. All right, so I've gone in and I've taken some time to organize these a little bit. You can see I put the hex code under each one. Some people like to put it on top of them. Personally, I like to put it under because when you get to these darker colors, you know, in order to see that hex code, you'd have to change it to a lighter text color, and it's just not worth it to me, so I put it underneath them all. Accessibility is key, right? So, and obviously you'd want to do that with these as well. Looking at these, they're very similar color palettes. They both work. I prefer this method. Again, this was taught to me by another designer, Bethany Serber. Highly recommend you guys look her up. She's a typography guru. It drives me nuts how she can just walk circles around me with typography. That's supposed to say grayscale. But yeah, I definitely give her a look up on LinkedIn. So that is kind of the basics of how you can make a color palette. Now in this next video, I'm going to show you how you can take this color palette and you can basically plug it into Figma and say, these are the colors we're using. This is how I want things set up, and Figma, or you can do the same thing in Sketch and Adobe XD again. And we'll kind of go from there. So I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for chiming in.